Hi, Kirsten, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order a council meeting for Monday, March 23rd, 2026. Everyone that can, please rise for the playing of the national anthem. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendoronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Before we approve the agenda, a late delegation request was received from Annette Gibbons regarding the Niagara Governance Update Report. Can I have a mover and seconder to waive the procedural bylaw and add this delegation to the agenda? A 2/3 vote is required for approval. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Charwa. All in favor? That's carried. Resolved that Section 8.52B of the Rules of Procedure be waived to permit Annette Gibbons to delegate. And that was moved by Howe and Charwa, and that's carried. We will discuss the report immediately following the delegation from Annette. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that the March 23rd, 2026 council meeting agenda be approved as amended. All in favor? And that's carried. Annette, please come to the podium. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Jordan, CAO Sarah Kim, councillors, town staff, and residents of Grimsby. My name is Annette Gibbons, and I'm a lifetime resident of Grimsby and live on Lawrence Avenue. I am here tonight to voice my concern and opposition to the proposed recommendation presented tonight to Council in the CAO 26-04 Niagara Governance Update of the reduction in council size from 8 councillors to 6 for the 2026 municipal election, which is scheduled for October the 26th, 2026. I believe any type of governance change that directly impacts the taxpayers and the residents of Grimsby, that they should actually have some say in the decision. And I was a little taken aback by the recommendation of the council size reduction, considering the governance review public information session hasn't happened yet, as it's scheduled for this coming Wednesday, March the 25th. Reducing council size so close to the municipal election will have a financial impact because a peer review would need to be completed beforehand. An important point to consider also is the fact that included in the Grimsby letter to Premier Ford, noting that Grimsby is one of the fastest growing municipalities in the Niagara region, and town growth rate is greater than the provincial and national rates. By reducing the number of council representatives, it will put more workload on the existing council representatives and their ability to participate in standing and advisory committees. It is also concerning that the report mentions an at-large system, because an at-large system, it has less accountability. An at-large system is when one councillor is elected to represent the entire area of Grimsby instead of a ward system. And it's proven in where it has municipalities that have had this large system, there's less accountability and less focus on specific neighborhoods and their issues. By reducing tonight, I am respectfully asking council to consider an amendment to the recommended motion on the basis my request ensures an open and transparent process that includes public taxpayer participation in governance reform, which includes a comprehensive update from the 2021 consultant report on council size and structure. So my recommendation would be to receive the report, and whereas the majority of the mayors has signed the joint letter stating a commitment to build a governance model that is streamlined and transparent to the public. And I would suggest the town of Grimsby supports that motion that was passed by Regional Council on February 26 regarding the governance review, and that the council ensures, this council ensures and endorses any governance changes, be it council size or structure, that it is transparent, open, and inclusive for all residents. That a full comprehensive governance review process is established where citizens will be ensured the opportunity to have a seat at the table and be an integral part of the decision process and how they will be governed in the town of Grimsby and the Niagara region. And that the town clerk be directed to circulate the motion to all the mayors and of the municipalities and the regional municipality of Niagara. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue tonight.
Thank you, Annette. Questions from council? Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I think I heard this correctly, but if I don't, please. Early on in your presentation, you mentioned that a peer review would be required. Could you just expand upon that and tell us why it would be required?
It was in the CAO's report that a peer report would have to be required based on the ward boundaries. So I think Ms. Kim would be able to answer your question better than I would because it was in her report. And it was stated that a peer report would need to be done.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think this will be part of the bigger report discussion, which I can address it at that time. It would probably align better when I'm doing my updates. I think it is a peer in time of expediting the process if we are mandated by the province, and if council chooses to retain the ward system, then a peer review is an option to do it to reduce the timelines required.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, and that, the only thing I can think about, and because we'll be talking about the report, but the cruel reality of it is, what was it, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, when Ford canceled half of the councillors out of the Toronto Council, what was it, a week or 2 weeks before the municipal election? And you think that man give any concern to it or thought to it? No. So, it's what we're dealing against and what it can do, because he got away with it.
Any further questions? Yeah. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation? Moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolve that the delegation from Annette Gibbons be received. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Annette. All right, can I have a mover and seconder to get the Niagara Governance Update Report on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Charrois. Sarah, you can introduce the report.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the most part, the report is to provide information of what has been done to date. What I do want to clarify or make some clarification in the report are, So the deadline for council to approve any changes in terms of ward boundaries or council composition was January of 2026. So the legislative timeline has passed. Therefore, as it stands, we will be proceeding as status quo for the 2026 election, unless the province, who has the authority, intervenes or mandate a change, right, at any time. And like you, as Councillor Howe mentioned, they did make a change in September for City of Toronto on an election year. So given that in mind, so the discussion is really centered on if the province makes a change, how will the town react? So we've been hearing from the Premier, even last week in his speech, that he does have concerns of council sizes and the priority of the council size, reducing council size for the province. So I think the intent of the report is to have this discussion and get ahead of the narrative. The mayors, the 8 municipality mayors, have worked to strongly emphasize no forced amalgamation, and they will continue to do so. The discussion tonight, though, is to see how we will prepare ourselves in the case that there is a provincial intervention. So I think it's timely to have this conversation, given that the provincial legislature resumes sitting today. So if mandated, some topics of conversation is, I think there needs to be some form of direction on how we see our council size and what kind of system. Is it a ward or at large? I will also note that the intention is also to align with some of the other municipalities that currently have the 8 councillors plus 1 mayor, so 9 in total. They have already reviewed or reviewing this matter. The motion is very similar to the motion passed in one of our local municipalities. So I think for consistency, the language was drafted similarly. So I'll open the floor for any questions.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this an appropriate time for discussion, or are we just asking questions now? Okay. So I know that there's pressure to do something, but I don't support any reduction in council size. I don't think it addresses any of the real, I don't think, that, and I've had this discussion before, and I apologize for repeating myself, but I don't think this addresses any of the real challenges that the region is dealing with, or that the local municipalities are dealing with. From a cost perspective, council is a very small part of the overall budget. Even if you remove 2 councillors in Grimsby, the savings are marginal. So we're talking about saving thousands of dollars in a budget of millions of dollars. If you look at the region, 1 police officer costs significantly more than 2 councillors, like double what 2 councillors cost. Anytime we have any sort of consultant engaged by the municipality, it's a minimum $50,000 project, which is 2 councillors. So you have to have some perspective on these numbers. If you want to talk about costs, let's look at the regional issues, and that is policing costs that are increasing exponentially every year, infrastructure deficits. It's not council stipends or council pay that is the issue here. There's increasing pressure from the province on the region for things like homelessness, dealing with social issues that have never been a regional concern before. So the province is talking about efficiency, but municipalities like Grimsby and the Niagara region are being asked to do more with less. So the whole thing that started this discussion, people have forgotten perhaps because it's become such a noisy issue, but it was all supposed to be about housing. So if somebody can explain to me, well, let me get to my question later. There's no connection between reducing the number of councillors and housing. There's no argument that you can make that says that reducing 2 councillors in the municipality of Grimsby is going to increase housing. Housing delays are tied to servicing capabilities, financing, and approvals. It has to do with the interest rate, and the market has nothing to do with the number of councillors at this table here. Cutting 2 councillors doesn't approve a subdivision faster or build a single unit in the town of Grimsby. So what it does do, though, is it reduces representation. Annette mentioned before, and we've mentioned as a council several times. It reduces oversight, so it means less people, whether we agree with each other or not, I appreciate hearing multiple voices at this table. I like hearing different voices. It allows me to change my opinion. Hearing people that I disagree with is good, not bad, okay? In the 1980s, when I was a kid, and we had 8,000 people, there were 8 councillors in Grimsby. In the 90s, as the population doubled, there were 8 councillors. And the population has doubled since then. We're over 32,000 people, and we still have 8 councillors. So the number of people being represented by each councillor has quadrupled in my lifetime. We haven't increased representation as we've grown. We haven't done it on a per resident basis. We've changed ward boundaries because population changes have occurred. So if we're serious about governance reform, there are much bigger opportunities. I agree with reducing duplications between the region. I've always advocated for either an elimination or reduction of planning at the regional level. I think planning is a local issue. So that right away, that entire department, if you were to eliminate that, would reduce significant costs from the region. So we should be asking who delivers what services and whether that structure still makes sense. There are real structural questions we could be tackling. This isn't one of them. So what are the actual dollar savings here are the questions we need to ask. How does this improve service delivery? Because it doesn't. How does this help build houses? It doesn't. So what's actually happening here? I'm going to go back to my days as an English teacher. And in Henry V, there's a quote that says, "An empty vessel makes a great noise." And this is a perfect example of that. There is no substance to this discussion at all. There is no validation to this argument. It's just a lot of noise over nothing, and it solves no problem. So I can't support something that's largely symbolic, and this reduction from 8 to 6 is literally a symbolic reduction. It has no real value. It increases nothing. It makes nothing better from a governance perspective. It's just saying, hey, you know what? You want us to do something? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to check a little box for you. And does that make you happy? I hope this makes you happy, because then we won't have to deal with this issue again. It doesn't solve any problem. So I apologize for, I've taken up all my time. Those are my thoughts, Mayor, and I really don't think that this is any solution to any actual issue that exists anywhere in the Niagara region. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I think, too, because the resolution has 4 separate things, I think splitting them and voting them separately may be a way where I know you're in favor of part of it, but not all of it. So up next, we have Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I don't totally disagree with what Annette Gibbons just spoke about. I mean, I think we all like the ward system. We've been working with this ward system for quite some time. I don't disagree with a lot of the sentiments that Councillor DeFlavio just mentioned. And yes, I believe there will be some changes and need to be some changes at the regional level. So, but having said that, I think the train has left the station. I think Queen's Park is going to do something. That's just my own personal opinion. And if we're not seen, and I to use some of the words that Councillor DeFlavio said, we need to be seen to be doing something, however little it might be, or we just might lose more than we hope for. In the last term, I was very keen on a 6-ward Grimsby, but it never got passed. But I would be sympathetic towards having a 6-councillor at-large town. And I say that because, I may represent Ward 1, but I can guarantee you that 90% of the phone calls and the things that I do in Grimsby are for the town at large. And I do put a lot of work into it, whether people know that or not. So I believe that maybe I should be looking at being a council at large so I can deal with all of the issues right across the town. And let's face it, when we come to council, we don't deal with just ward stuff. 90% of what we're dealing with is actually town stuff in general, at large. So why don't we just take the extra step and go to the at-large model? And I think that's the one I lean towards. I do like the wards. It makes everything nice and neat. But in another few years, we'll be changing it again because maybe the population shifts one way or the other. I think having councils at large makes a big statement. And I think that for the residents, they don't have to be looking for one or two councillors. They can find one of six to do what they want or ask the questions they want or voice their concerns. So I do lean towards the 6 at-large council. And I think if we're going to be seen to be doing something, I think that's the way we should go. And believe me, when Queen's Park comes knocking on the door, if we haven't done anything, we're not going to be looked very favorably overall. So that's where I stand on this. And I said I'd like the ward system. It's nice and neat, fine, very family, very, very cozy, and so on and so forth. But I think we need to be bigger, and I think we need to be representing the town at large, and because that's what I do anyways. So let's go all the way. And thank you for the time.
Up next, we have Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. First off, I'd like to say I think it's excellent that we're being proactive and coming up with our own solution to be ready should Queen's Park decide that they're going to step in. I agree with quite a lot of what Councillor Freak just said, so I'll be short and sweet. I also fully endorse the 6 councillors at large. I'll take phone calls from anyone across town. I've never really looked at the wards as holding as much of a representation scale as we like to give it credit for. I think we all represent Grimsby as a whole, and I think this kind of officializes that. And like Councillor Freak said, sorry, I think I lagged out a little bit there. Can you hear me in council?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Every single one of us represent Grimsby as a whole, so I'm just gonna end my comments there. Mayor, I think the 6 at large is what we should do and proactively do it ourselves. Thank you.
Councillor Vard.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I agree with the 2 councillors, Councillor Frank, Councillor Bradzi. I think that the province has been very good to Grimsby, at least for the last 4 years. With the hospital, the rec center, we've done well, and we've been well represented where we had been ignored for a very long time. And I see now the province wants to see some action. And it concerns me that if we don't do something to show that, yes, we're on board, we're going to do our part, even if it's just a small part, I think we need to be prepared to do it. And I think 6 councillors would be fine. I don't have a problem with 6 councillors. I prefer a ward system, but I don't think that if we're told at the last minute or in the next couple of months that it was going to be councillors at large right before, or 6 councillors right before the election, then the only practical way to do it would be councillors at large. So I guess I do think that we need to be a bit pragmatic and show that we're willing to cooperate, because we can't always just say it's the other guy's problem. It's all about the region, and I'm one for thinking it's a lot about the region, but we can't just say it's it's a regional problem, not our problem. Because when they have, I don't know how many counselors, 40 counselors at the regional level, at the regional table? 31? Okay. So, I think we have to do our part, and it's more of a contribution, a statement, than it is sort of, I don't think it's going to impact our day-to-day business. I think residents will still be well reflected. I often look at my role here while I represent a ward, and most of the calls I get are from my ward, but I think that our role here is much bigger than just, me speaking for Ward 2. Ward 2 isn't my little fiefdom. I represent the town of Grimsby, and I help mostly the residents in Ward 2 who call me, but if anyone else calls me, I'll talk to anybody. So I'll leave it at that and just say, basically, I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I think we have, pardon me, a few issues on the table to really decide upon tonight. One is, our size. One is to think about, how 6 people would get the job done rather than 8. The second one is to think about, how the public is served in all of this and whether they are better or worse off if we change the size from 8 to 6. So when I think about our size, actually, and about having 8 of us, and perhaps a potential move to 6 instead, I think it is quite doable, quite honestly. We have standing committees with a councillor from each ward. Well, then we would have 3 councillors on a standing committee and perhaps 2 or 3 lay members instead. It is entirely still doable. We have an enormous amount of advisory committees, and we might look at redoing the composition or the mix of that in some way, shape, and form. And that's probably a good thing, to put some time and effort into reconsidering why we do what we do with our advisory committees. But I think it's entirely doable in terms of the effort and time of a councillor if there were 6 instead of 8. Do I think the public is better served? I think the public actually is quite confused by a lot of things. And I know sometimes we joke a bit and say we all need a lesson in municipal or civic government again. But I've seen members of the public show up at our front desk, and they are confused about what is a regional responsibility and what is a municipal one. I've likewise seen members of the public write in emails to all of us, and no one answered, not a single one of us, because on one occasion I actually did, and the response was, "You're the only one who wrote to me." And quite honestly, that was probably rare. Most of the time I probably wouldn't neither. So, when we have a ward system with 1 or 2, or however it is set up, I think that makes it easier for the public to know, who do I contact, right? Rather than, I'll send this email out to all 6 and, like a shotgun, hope that somebody responds. If we live in a ward system where there is alignment and this is my ward councillor, you know who to write to. And if that doesn't work, you know probably what your next step needs to be too. So I do think it is still possible to get the work done with 6 councillors. I personally would support a ward system still. I think it makes life, easy is not the word I'm looking for. It is better to reach out to the residents and have them reach out to us, whether we're talking about the campaign trail where you're going door to door and knocking on doors. You get closer, I'll say, to your residents when you are able to work in a ward system. And likewise, I think it makes it easier for them to know who to contact and how to do that. So by and large, though, I will say, and I hate to I hate to repeat something, but, there was a very famous person in politics who said, if you're not at the table, you'll be on the table. And I think this is one of those instances right now where if we don't come up with a plan to do something, it will be forced on us instead. And better that we have a plan and a recommendation of what we could live with than we get something forced on us that we don't like at all.
Councillor Korstanji, then Councillor Howe, then Councillor Sharwell.
Thank you, through Chair. So just to clarify, with the letter that the mayor sent, have we already committed to this? Because I feel like this was, in the letter that the 8 mayors said, they proposed that this is something we would do instead of amalgamation.
I think it wasn't like, do you want to say?
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe I'll let
Yeah, I don't think it was a commitment. It was to look at it and bring it back to our councils for this exact process right now.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Because I read it as this is something that we would do so that we don't have to amalgamate. So the concern I have with this is, yes, I'm sure we can make it work with 6. I'm sure we can decide at large or ward system. My concern is the lack of public consultation. We have it set up for Wednesday. We're discussing it tonight. I have heard from one resident on this particular topic of reducing council and if they want at large or ward system, and that is Ms. Gibbons tonight. This went on the agenda Friday. I don't even know if the majority of our residents understand that we're deciding this tonight. I would prefer more time to hear from the people that I represent, and then if they say, hey, I prefer at large, I'm your voice, then okay, at large is what I'd vote for. But it's really hard to sit here when I haven't heard from my constituents on what they would actually like for representation in their town with the tax dollars that they pay for. So my preference would be, let's have the public consultation, put this on Wednesday night and let people answer it, and then bring this back to the table the next council meeting and then send it off to the premier. I understand the importance of let's be prepared for what comes down the pipe, absolutely. But I think that the public needs to have a big say in this.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. In a nutshell, 6 to 8 sucks. There's no other way around it. Because I take a look and think of how successful the 8 councillors and 1 mayor has been through the years. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. Hey, I was on the council in the 90s, well, 3 terms. There was 8 of us. And Nick, you're absolutely right. But there was 8 of us, and we made it work, and we dealt with what we had to deal with. We dealt with it in a whole bunch of different ways, though. Now we've got 8, and it's these things coming off of these things that occupy a fair amount of time, and most of it is difficult, but it's what people expect, and it's very, very time consuming to do it right instead of picking up a phone and saying, hello, is that you? Yeah. And you go and you deal with it. You deal with it as human beings and not as a piece of machinery. The fact that I'll take this apart. At large, no. Ward system, it has always worked. When there's a couple of you in a ward, that if one of you is away, well, guess what? The other one picks it up. And you get to know the ins and outs and the personalities. And it is. I mean, the people that we deal with all the time, they're all personalities, and we've got to deal with those. But we know what the personalities are. And you're able to make good decisions by knowing that as well. So my concern is going down to 6, is I think we're going to lose interaction and interactions with people partaking in the system and partaking in making us wiser. And I'm thinking of the advisory committees. especially. And I've said it here, I've said it all the time, that the best committee size is one. But, you know, that's not the case. But where I've really found it this year is because there's so many more things that there are some people on the advisory committees that are just rock stars, you know, and I've learned so much from them that I can't replace what they're, but my concern is we go down to 6 standing committees, do they go? Advisories, do they go? They're gone. And that's what has made Grimsby, okay, us included, and go back a couple of years and go back a few more years after that, has made it a really great place to be. It's been a successful place. It's on good footing. Do we need all this? No, we don't. But it's going to come. But just a couple of things is we have had training, I think, since we came on, 3 times on scams on the internet, on the scams and whatnot. What's the first thing they tell you about? Look out if it shows a sense of urgency. Oh, well then I better delete this one. Well, what are they doing? Okay, that's all it is. It's, you know, I think they just got part-time on the phones in Montreal. But, you know, it's bad that it gets to that. I don't like that. Bullying, if you feel like you're bullied. Okay, here we go. When I was in elementary school, I was 4'11", 95 pounds. To say I wasn't bullied, I'm here to tell you, I got my butt kicked more than once. But then as I got into high school, and then as I grew, then all of a sudden, I wasn't being bullied because they couldn't bully me. As I got older, got to the point where you couldn't be bullied even by money and by business people and people that are running businesses and making things happen. You know, they put their pants on just like me. And we're going to lose so much. Thank you, Katie. You saved me. And but if we go to 6, I'll support it. To 6, but I won't support at large. You got to stick with the ward so that you can give it, you know, that help, and so that when I go on vacation, who's ever going to be there? I don't know if Land's going to be back. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's worked out pretty well in our way. So thank you very much, and thank you, Katie.
Councillor Sharwa.
Oh, sorry.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I purposely went last because I wasn't quite sure where I was going to land on this. Coming in here, I would say I was kind of more so leaning towards 6. And that was probably more so for myself. As you know, I'm not going to be running as a council member next time, so I will be running at large. But the reasons that I would say that I've heard around the table for why we're going for 6 is not the reason I think we should be going for 6. I work for the people of Grimsby. I don't work for Doug Ford. So if Doug Ford says to jump, that doesn't mean I'm going to jump. He's going to have to come down here and demand that we're going to jump, and then maybe we'll have a discussion about it. But for us to change our rules because there's a threat of him, you know, saying that we're going to have to change it, that's not enough for me. So I've kind of reverted back to 8. Reason being that, you know, although there is, I think 6 could work, we're still in a system where, and again, I don't want the media to skew this because none of this is a cost savings. So $48,000 is a drop in the bucket, and $48,000, you get a whole lot of service for 2 counselors at $48,000. This would cost, and then if those 2 are removed, we have to replace that time with staff. So we are a bargain. So I'm just going to reiterate that. So again, we are here for the taxpayers. I am a taxpayer. All the residents in Grimsby, they want representation. So really, the more representation, the better. Yes, we do not always agree, but I do think that there are very strong, capable people that are very passionate about representing people in a political role. And we know that as soon as we start to bring the number down, then this becomes a matter of people with deep pockets being able to fund their campaigns, when people that may be single mothers, people that may be university students that would like a chance at this will probably not have a chance because there will be all these barriers financially. So I'm back to the 8. I'm getting back to the 8, and I'm also back to not at large. If we have this discussion and it has to be something, it's got to be wards, not at large, because I don't want the person to be winning just being the person that is backed by the most people with the deepest pockets. So if we can keep it as status quo first and then go from there, then that's how I would like this, to have that vote, please.
Councillor Vardy?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just did a quick look at using ChatGPT, which I've recently discovered this weekend about all the wonderful things it can do. So when you have a breakdown of population to number of councillors, for instance, St. Catharines has a population of almost 137,000. They have one councillor for every 11,400 people. Niagara Falls has one councillor for every 11,800. Welland has one for every 4,650. And if I go down to Grimsby, we've got one for every 3,610. So in looking at the analysis, compared to St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Welland, their population, they are underrepresented and we are overrepresented. And believe me, even though I just did this with ChatGPT, someone else has also looked at this and said there's an imbalance here. The other thing I want to say, with all due respect to Councillor Charrois, we municipalities serve at the pleasure of the province. So when Doug Ford says jump, we do say how high. We can complain about it, but the fact of the matter is the province is our boss. And, we serve at the pleasure. So if the province wants to make whatever changes they want, it's in the Municipal Act. You can shake your head, you can not like it, but that's the reality. So, it's for us to navigate the best way that's going to serve our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Howe?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, and this is to ChatGPT. The 3 ones that in our region that you picked, I wouldn't live in any one of them, so.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I don't agree with an at-large council. When I first ran for council, I had the confidence to run for council because I was a kid, I was young, and I was living in my ward, and we had a family business in that ward, and I knew the people in my neighborhood, and we had a family farm in that neighborhood. That gave me the confidence to run, and those people voted for me because they knew me as somebody who lived in that neighborhood. I was able to afford, as a young person, to create flyers and distribute those flyers because it was a ward system. If it was an at-large system, I wouldn't have been able to afford to put a flyer in every house in Grimsby. The system, that an at-large system favors incumbents. It's great for me now, it is, but it's not what's best for the town of Grimsby, and it's not what's best for promoting future leaders in the town of Grimsby. If we want new people to come along, if we want new voices in Grimsby, we need to have those openings that occur when a ward councillor steps down. Not just the wealthiest person who can afford to send out flyers and put advertisements in the newspaper and do the things that you need to get your name recognized. We need people who actually do things in their neighborhood and in their community that are actually known in their community for positive reasons, that then can become future councillors, future MPPs, MPs, whatever that future looks like, future mayors. We shouldn't be here talking about what gets us reelected, because an open system across the entire municipality means that probably 6 of us get reelected next time around, because the 6 most best-known people tend to get reelected in that system. But that's not what's best for the town of Grimsby, and that's definitely not what's best for the future of the town of Grimsby. So I didn't get a chance to talk about the at-large and ward system because it wasn't part of what I wanted to speak to earlier, but I do want to address that. Definitely not in favor of that. And I think 8 ward councillors is still the way to go.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So there's certainly some great arguments around the table, but I do believe that we're just being a little bit reluctant to change or look at change. And I believe we're reluctant to look at this in a very positive light and a very logical light. This is not political for me. It's how is the town best represented? Is the town best represented by having anyone in the town having 6 councillors to call on, or 1 or 2? And I think the people of Grimsby would like to be able to call on any one of the councillors. As I said earlier, I don't work for just Ward 1. I mean, I do a lot of work in Ward 1, and I get a lot of calls from Ward 1, but I would say that 80% of what I do is across the town, and that's true for probably all of us. And we sit in this council chamber, as I said before, and we make decisions based on the town as a whole, not as a ward. And that's the way we should be looking at this. We should be looking at this as a higher level. And, yes, the ward system is comfortable for everybody. It's nice and neat if you're running for office and so on and so forth. But if you want to just do something for your ward, then you become blind to the rest of the town. And that's not what I want to be. I want to be able to have that broad look at our town as a whole. And how does things in Ward 4 affect things in Ward 1? Because sometimes they do. And so I would like to be able to represent all of them, not just one of them. And, if someone in town prefers to call me rather than someone else, then heaven forbid, they should do that. But the thing is, some councillors will have more time on their hands to do this and some won't. So I think having 6 at large will accommodate that type of situation. So I still believe that we are just kind of being very myopic here, and we need to think at the bigger picture. And this is not about Doug Ford I'm talking about. Yes, we do, as Councillor have already said, we do work, and we are elected at the pleasure of the province. We are their creature. We are born by them. So we just have to open up our eyes and look a little bit broader in what we're doing and what we want to do, what we need to do for the town as a whole. Because we're growing Grimsby, we're not growing our wards. We want to be progressive for the town, not for the ward. So we need to have this broad view. And I think that we need to be thinking that way. If we don't think that way, then I don't think we're doing our jobs. So hopefully we will look at that in a very positive way. We're not making any decisions tonight, I understand that. And I hope, and I do hope the public will have their say, and I hope they will come out and give us what they think. That is important, as Councillor Costanzi said earlier. It's really, really important. But anyway, that's what I think, and I mean that's my thought. Okay, so take it for what it's worth, but you need to think broader, you need to think bigger, and we need to think town-wide. And what's good in what's good in one part of the town is good for the other part of the town. So let's keep our minds wide open. Let's be a little broader in our thinking. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sharp.
Through Mayor Jordan, clarification, are we just speaking right now to the wards and the council composition? Because I would like to ask a little bit for clarification on the water and wastewater public corporations. So I don't know if we're going to be speaking on some of these separately, or
See you, Mr. Mayor. That's more at a regional level, and they have a meeting coming up on Thursday. So I think that's just for information that those were some of the topics that were addressed at a more regional level.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure when we're voting on this, if we can start off with status quo with the 8 counselors, and then we can work through that.
See you, Mr. Mayor. So, I mean, we could change the wording of the motion. I think this is on the premise that we have a mandate from the province, right? That there is an intervention. If that happens, we might not have that opportunity to debate like this or to provide any kind of have time for the public consultation piece. I mean, that's for the province to decide. And so we can add those wording if mandated by the province. If not.
Yes, I would appreciate that, because just reading it it sounds like we are in favor of changing it, whereas it's only if we are forced.
Yes, so we can make those wordings stronger, and maybe we'll start there.
Be great, thank you.
And we're also welcome to split those questions up and vote on them separately, and I think that makes the most sense. Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through the chair. So just for clarification, I understand we're preparing, but will this be part of the open house then on Wednesday to collect resident feedback? And will we get that resident feedback before the next council meeting so that if we want to lift this and talk about this again, that we can do that to speak on behalf of our residents?
See you, Mr. Mayor. I think the town will continue to do the public information and consultation. The PIC will happen on Wednesday, and I will bring forward a report to collect the data received from that PIC for the next council meeting, so that can be tabled through that report.
Okay, but just to clarify that this specific information will be on Wednesday night.
So, Mayor, can I also get a clarification? I see that item 2, we only have the 2 options. What about the third one with the 6 at large? That isn't in there.
Sorry, I'll count. Yes, to answer Councillor Korstanji first, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this will all be presented and be provided on Wednesday. And we will be gathering the feedback, and the public survey is also open till March 30th, so we can gather that information, so it can be presented at the April meeting. So we will be collecting all that data. So if you need to lift it or debate it in the April meeting, that's a possibility. And as for Councillor Frake, sorry, can you repeat that question, please?
Yes, sorry, Sarah. I see that in item 2 in the motion there, you've noted the 2 options, but not the third one, which is 6 councillors at large. Is that intentional, or are we doing it separately?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that was in the body of the report, right? I wasn't sure how this debate would happen, this discussion would go. So we will prepare the motions accordingly and do. I think clerk is asking for 5 minutes so we can sort that out. So we can have all the motions. I knew there would be a few different views. So it is, we'll work on that motion. But maybe to clarify, sorry.
Councillor DeVoli speak, then everyone's spoken.
Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Yeah. All right, so before we take that 5 minutes to get the motions exactly the way we want it, I think the last speaker is Councillor DeVoli, unless Councillor Bradsey wants to speak a second time, but Councillor DeVoli, go ahead.
Thank you. I won't be very long, but just to reiterate that these are turbulent times, and much as we, probably all of us, would like to stay where we are with 8 councillors, and truly, we do not see an immediate we don't see anything wrong with the 8 and how things are operating. But there are others around us, and specifically at Queen's Park, who see things differently. And so this boat on this lake is, in rough seas at the moment. And much as we might like to stick with the 8, we have to think about those other voices around us and the powers that they have, and be prepared with a plan, basically. So we need to be proactive in all of this. The other thought I wanted to leave is that we currently work in a ward system, and we're talking about perhaps going from 4 to 3 or 4 to 6 or whatever it may be. I think of the ward system as just being the methodology as to how we are elected. At the end of the day, when I sit at this table, I don't just vote on Ward 1 matters. I have to vote on every matter that comes to the table and have to think about the entire town and not just what's best for my ward. So whether we have 4 wards, 3 wards, 6 wards, we have always had that, I'll call it that mentality, that thought, that idea that we are here to work for the good of the entire town, not just of our ward. And so when I think of, a ward system versus at large, again, just to repeat, I think of a ward system as just a methodology, a way to actually structure the election and move forward, a way to help people know who they should contact if they have a specific issue in their town. But when I think of that at-large system, and I go back to that example I gave, people have written to us, and I've written to all 9 of us, and sometimes no one replies. And that's what happens when, everybody is voted at large. How do you know? Whose job is it to reply? How do we divvy up the work and so on? And that's where a ward system has made a lot of sense in terms of the practicalities of how we do our job.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. A question, I guess, probably to CEO, Ms. Clerk, or sorry, Ms. Kem. Administering the election for, let's say, for the 4 wards currently, could you just kind of compare the workload on the administrative side between 4 wards and a potential 6 wards, or even a 3-ward system? How much does that complicate it for you guys?
Through the chair, a few things I can speak about. The more wards you have, the more locations you likely need for polling locations, or you'd need to start considering like a super polls that handle multiple wards. So more locations, more staff, more equipment is one of the things to keep in mind. At this time, we have prepared to run the election based on a 4-ward model. If we're instructed to pivot, we can do that, but it comes with complications. An at-large system from an election side of things is much easier. It's 1 ballot, not 4 different ballots. It's a little bit more streamlined. As outlined in the motion, if we are going to reduce the number of councillors and keep a ward boundary, we do need to get the 2021 report peer review to ensure that the growth analysis is still accurate and it's still a fair representation between those 2 options, 2B or 2-3. So is it complicated? Sure, but we're prepared to do it both ways. It's really a council decision.
Thank you, Tori. I think, is it fair to kind of assume from what you said that a at-large system would bring some workload efficiencies?
Through the chair, perhaps from an election standpoint and given the short turnaround, it could be efficient. But if we're talking into the next term of council, I think it's similar workloads and similar plans.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, if we do end up going with the ward system, I'm just going to say that my preference would be to stick with a 3-ward system. And then, so we maintain having 2 councillors per ward. And then I don't see the point in expanding from 4 wards to 6 wards. Like the clerk said, that adds additional polling stations, complicates confusions for residents to which ward they're in. I still come across residents all the time that don't know which ward they're in and don't know the ward boundaries. So I think simplicity is king here.
All right, everyone's spoken twice, so we'll...
Sorry, I just asked for a clarification. Can I speak on this really quick?
Sure, if it's a clarification.
Yes, I asked for a clarification before. This is just a point. So we didn't speak on, we spoke about, whether we're status quo, we spoke about the at-large, but we didn't actually speak about the 2C or 3. So I'm just going to throw out my opinion. If it comes down to, I don't know if we're going through this in order, and it comes down to which of the wards Sarah, did you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what we would be writing back to the province is if mandated, we would prefer a ward system, right? And only if we get the mandate could we could go into the weeds and look at the two options. I think the two options were presented because it was introduced in 2021, right? The 2B was the consultant's recommendation, and option 3 was the option preferred by the public survey. So that's why those two are up there, are on it. But I think we're not deciding that. We don't need to decide that now because we don't have that mandate yet, right?
Thank you. And I was actually a part of that, the group that came up with this, and my preference of these was the alignment of option 3. So I think if we had to pick between the two, I think option 3 being from the lake to the escarpment, it makes the most sense for me personally. But if that's something we're not dealing with today, then that's great.
All right, we're just going to take a 5-minute break so we can clarify the 4 points in the resolution.
Just give it 1 second, sir.
All right, welcome back. Sarah, you're going to clarify?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so I think the first motion to show support for the motion passed by regional council, that is kind of reiterating that the town does not agree with any kind of forced amalgamation. So we'll kind of vote that separately to get agreement on that. And then the second motion, we will first pass a motion that if mandated by the province, that council endorse a reduction size of council size from 8 to 6 and at large, and we'll pass that first. If that fails, we'll do the second motion, where if mandated by the province, a council reduction and award system. And then for the third motion, we've taken away that the implemented for the 2026 election. More or less, we're saying that the above changes cannot happen until 2030 if there is no provincial mandate intervention. And depending on the vote, the circulation is more of a housekeeping item.
All right, and now is the mover and seconder happy to stay the same, or do we want separate mover and seconders for each motion? It's Councillor DeFlavio, Councillor Sharwell. Okay. Right. So moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Sharwell. I'll read the first part of the report. Resolve that report CAO 26-04, Niagara Governance Update dated March 23rd, 2026 be received, and whereas the majority of mayors signed a joint letter stating a commitment to building a governance model that is streamlined and transparent to the public, and whereas and whereas the provincial government has expressed a desire to reduce the number of municipal councillors in the Niagara region, and whereas the timeline for council to enact a bylaw regarding ward structures in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001 has passed for the 2026 election, therefore be it resolved, number one, that the town of Grimsby supports the motion passed by Regional Council on February 26, 2026 regarding governance review. E-scribe vote, please. Councillor Frake, your vote? And Councillor
Yes.
Councillor Bradzi, your vote?
So yes.
Okay. And that's carried. Sorry. Now we move to Resolution 2A. Resolve that council endorse a reduction in council size from 8 councillors to 6 councillors and an at-large electoral system if mandated by the province.
Can we add a third option there, that council does not endorse a reduction in council size? Because that's not up there at all.
It's, we could add that only if both get defeated, so.
Shouldn't that be the first?
Counselor Frake, your vote?
Yes?
All right, that's defeated. All right, now we have 2B. Resolve-
Sorry, can we get a recording of who voted for what there?
Yeah. Through you, Chair, yes. Everybody voted no, apart from Councillor Frake and Councillor Baradzi, who voted yes.
All right, now we move to Resolution 2B. Resolve that council endorses a reduction in council size from 8 councilors to 6 councilors for the 2026 municipal election and implementing option 2B or 3 from the 2021 council structure and ward boundary review final report, and a peer review be completed to confirm projections, boundary rationale, and effective representation principles remain valid if mandated by the province. Use your e-scribe to vote.
Sorry, I'm a little confused by this one, because this one, we're saying that it's going to be 6 regardless, right? So I'm not quite sure what I'm voting on here.
Only if it's mandated by the province.
So if it's mandated by the province, we're picking
Ward with a review.
Ward system instead of at-large.
Okay. So if I'm voting for the ward system, I'm voting, okay, thank you. Okay, this clarification, because I don't want people voting on the wrong thing here. So if we're saying this is only, because you did say that this is only if it's mandated to 6. So it's either ward, we're only voting for ward or at large. We're not voting for 8 in this one, Nick. This is 6 at large or ward. Can you clarify?
Yeah. So
only 6.
So this is, yes,
If
6 on
mandated by
the ward,
the
if
province,
mandated by the province, if, we don't need to vote on status quo, remaining status quo.
But Mayor, just to clarify, if we do not support a reduction at all, then we should put that in writing, right? If we want to maintain 8 councilors, 2 per ward, the way that we have now, we should say that. We shouldn't accept that this change is going to occur. So I want to be clear to people that if we want to maintain the status quo, that there needs to be a third one and we need to vote this down.
I'd second that if we add that in.
No, I think what we need to do is vote on this now because that's the way it was written. And we'll add a third option if we need to. Councillor Frake.
No.
All right, that's carried. Now we move to number 3. Resolve that the town clerk be directed to confirm with the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing that without provincial intervention, the above changes cannot take place until the 2030 election.
Can we do number 4 too?
And number 4 together with that, and that the town clerk be directed to circulate the motion to the Regional Municipality of Niagara, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Premier of Ontario. Use your e-scribe.
Point of clarification. This doesn't say a date. Is this after the next council meeting when this is ratified, that the communication would happen?
Through the chair, this would be ratified in 2 business days, or sorry, yes, 2 business days when the strong mayor veto power ends. But to the CIO's point, another report will come forward with the full survey results on April 13th. So there could be further direction to send the full survey results with the PIC results to the Premier's office as well, or the same people.
Yeah, we entirely recommend to send all our information to the province. The province needs to hear from everyone, and I really encourage every individual to email the province if they are able to. Yes.
Mayor, through you, and I apologize for belaboring this, but the registration date, and clerk, you can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the registration date for elections May 1st, the start date? So that means that people who were planning to run, based on what they know now, are going to be forced to change that. And I'm not talking about incumbents, again, I'm talking about people that, you know, we're taking on the lay of the land and deciding where to run, are going to have to change that decision within the next month. It doesn't seem like a very good timeline. I would say the 2030 election should be our recommendation. Not even if they can make this change, I don't think it's one that they should make this close to an election campaign.
It's the
Well-
2026, right?
It doesn't say that. It says, province, you can make that change. We can't. That's what this says. Right. But what I'm saying is we should say you shouldn't make that change because it's too close to the campaign. We're a month away from the election
But
beginning.
as history's proven, the province made the change in September for an October election in the city of Toronto.
I agree with all that, Mayor, but I think that what we're saying in our resolution should be what we believe as a council. So if we believe that it is too close to when the election is occurring to make this change, we should be saying that, not saying, hey, you know, it's up to you to do this. You know, I think that we need, when we pass a resolution as a council, it should be based on what we believe as a council. I don't think that this is what we believe. I don't think that, sorry, I'm speaking for me. I don't believe as a council that this is adequate time for this kind of a change to occur. And that's why there was a deadline back in January for this change to occur.
Unfortunately, that is, I think everyone around here believes that there's not enough time, but unfortunately that's not the decision we get to make any longer because that decision is going to be made by the province whether they decide to do this or not. So I think what we've stated in our debate this evening certainly clarifies that we're not happy with the province making the decision for us, but it's out of our control right now. Councillor Frake.
Yes.
I think everyone's voted. All right, and that's carried. All right, now we move to Chair's report. Councillor Frake, can you please give your Chair's report?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The Corporate Services Committee met on the 9th of March. We had a pretty meaty agenda. We had received 7 previous minutes, 3 from the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, one on September the 18th, one on November the 13th, 2025, and one on January the 8th, 2026. Also, 3 sets of minutes from the Grimsby Downtown BIA, one on October the 8th, one from December the 10th, and one from January the 14th. And we also received the Corporate Services Committee minutes from February the 2nd. We had one delegation in the name of Adele Henselwood, a farmer on the escarpment, to deal with the open air fire bylaw. We have received 7 discussion reports, mostly related to elections. TC 2605, which dealt with municipal elections update, specifically about the internet voting assistance at the polls. TC 2606, relating to election recount policy and bylaw, related to updates to the recount policy. TC 26-07, which was a 2026 election restricted acts bylaw, which talked about restrictions after the nomination day, for example. TC 26-08, which was a delegation of council authority bylaw, related to update of the delegations of authority. We received a discussion report from the open air fire bylaw update, which updated the open air fire policy. There was also an update on the updating of dispute processes by the bylaw, which is an update in person to allow the in-person dispute appeal process to go ahead. We were supposed to receive the Grimsby Fire Department accomplishments, but our chief was not well, so that was deferred to the next meeting. And that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your report, Councillor Frank. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes?
Sorry, I'd ask the clerk to lift an item.
Yes. We need the mover and seconder to get it on the floor, then we'll get it lifted. Moved by Councillor DeVoli, second by Councillor Howe. And Councillor Sharwa, you want to lift council from March 9th, 2026?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to lift item 6.1 in the council agenda, in the minutes, sorry. So it was, had to do with the integrity commissioner complaint. It's just the way that it was written. So it says, resolve that the chair's decision regarding Councillor Sharwa's comments be upheld. It was actually supposed to be for the challenge. So we voted for the challenge. So yes, Councillor DeVoli, Sharwa, Korstanji, and DeFlavio. So I don't know how you need to change that. So when you had explained it, you said if you're voting yes, you're voting so that I could continue. So because I had challenged the chair. I just want to make sure that this is reflected accurately in the minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, through the chair. So it's the chair's decision was not upheld. So yes meant that it wasn't upheld. So it's correct in the minutes. We've verified this with how the region does it too. This is the same. Yes is reflected correctly here.
That doesn't sound correct though. Resolve that the chair's decision regarding Councillor Korstanji's comments be upheld, but they were not upheld.
The chair's decision was not upheld because you're allowed to continue speaking.
Okay. I will, if that's how you do it at the region, that's fine. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. Thank you.
All right, moved by Councillor DeFoli, seconded by Councillor Howe. Resolve that the following minutes be approved. Corporate Services, March 9th, 2026. Council, March 9th, 2026. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, can I have a mover and seconder to receive the board minutes? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, seconded by Councillor Korstanji. And Councillor Howe, you want to speak on the library board minutes?
Through you, Mayor, I'm probably one step ahead of myself. Maybe I should save it for the announcements, but we're one step away, so I might as well say what it is. The library last week, March break, had 1,154 little kitties and their families for the 5 days. Imagine being around there with all those precious darlings. But anyway, congratulations to them.
Through the chair, so I'm looking at it, the vote is incorrect. I see what you're saying. It just, the yeses and nos need to be flipped, so we'll make that administrative change. My
Yes,
apologies.
that's great, thank you.
All right, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Corstangi. Resolved that the following board minutes be received. Grimsby Public Library Board, February 11th, 2026. Committee of Adjustment, February 17th, 2026. All in favor? And that's carried. And that's great news about the number of kids at the library. Are there any other announcements for this evening? Councillor Howe, we'll let you go again.
And thank goodness for our Facebook page. But today is World Water Day. Imagine that, and we're talking about what the province does to make life miserable for everybody. Gosh, what are we doing with the conservation authorities? Water. Anyways, World Water Day. Appreciate it.
Councillor Corstangi.
Thank you, through Chair. I'd just like to give a shout out to our Grimsby Curling Club and our West Niagara Special Olympics. This past Saturday, they held a district qualifier for the provincial games in curling, and we had 7 teams come from all around the district, and it could not have been done without the volunteers and the help with the Grimsby Curling Club. So I'd like to send out a great big thank you to them and a congratulations to our rock stars who won their division and played really, really well and represented us well. So congratulations to them. And I also like to give a shout out to the Niagara Sunflower Festival, held a fundraiser for Ukraine on the weekend, and they hosted Charlie Angus's Resistance Tour up at the Agricultural Fairgrounds, and it was packed. It was a great event, and I'm sure they raised a lot of money, but they had some really great inspirational speakers, so I'd just like to congratulate them on such a fantastic event.
Great. Any other announcements? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. The next season, the second half of the season for the Grimsby Authors Series continues this Friday. Jennifer Chevalier and Brian Goldman will be there. I believe there are still tickets left for the next 2 dates, so I would encourage people to buy them. It's a great event. All the proceeds go to the Grimsby Public Library, and they are always really well attended and really well run. So get your tickets if there's still some available.
Great. Seeing no more announcements, can I have a mover and seconder? All right, Councillor Bradzi. Sorry, I couldn't see you up there.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Sorry, I had a little hand raised. But as you know, it was an honor to raise the flag for Meals for Wheels, the Community Support Services of Niagara. We're launching their March for Meals campaign this month, and a large part of that was Mayors for Meals. So it's both an honor to raise that flag with them and an honor to don the Deputy Mayor in your absence for the day. But just wanted to touch on a couple little statistics for the Meals on Wheels program. I'm sure you all know they deliver hot and frozen nutritious meals to our most vulnerable population, seniors and adults with disabilities. With the increasing cost of food, rising inflation, and growing number of adults on fixed incomes, the services provided by this amazing group are seeing a huge increase in demand. The incredible work of them through its volunteers, helping those most in need, has reached 61,000 individuals across Niagara. It was staggering to see this firsthand, to go on the ride-alongs, delivering the meals to the residents, and it was a humbling experience and one I'll remember forever. Thanks, Mayor.
And thank you, Councillor, for stepping in. Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. I would just like to let the community know that as part of the Harmony House Jewelers fundraising with their online auction, which I spoke about at the last meeting, they are having a special fundraising evening, a sort of a soiree on April 16th. and there'll be food and wine and jewelry and all kinds of other good things. So it's supposed to be a very good night. And if you go, tickets I think are $250. So, and all the money raised, of course, goes to West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation and McNally House. So tickets will go fast. So if you're interested in a really nice evening out, just go to their website. You'll be able to find a link to the evening where you can buy tickets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Seeing no further announcements, can I have a mover and seconder for the bid? Oh, Councillor Sharwa?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were getting to the correspondence. I wanted to lift the NRT.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Can I have a mover and seconder for the Be a Donor Month proclamation? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Howe. Whereas April is Be a Donor Month in Ontario, and whereas the goal of being a donor month is to inspire those who have not yet registered consent for organ and tissue donation, and whereas on average 1,400 people in Ontario are waiting for a life-saving organ transplant, and every 3 days someone will die waiting for an organ transplant, and whereas in 2025, 362 deceased organ donors gave the gift of life, 1,088 deceased organ transplants were performed in Ontario, and 2,051 tissue donors enhanced the lives of thousands. And whereas 90% of Ontarians support organ and tissue donation, yet only 1 in 3, that's 35%, of eligible Ontarians have registered their consent to donate. And whereas families almost always have consented to donation when there is evidence a loved one registered their decision to donate, but in the absence of a registered donation decision, families consent only half of the time. And whereas everyone has the potential to be an organ donor and or tissue donor, regardless of age or health, one organ donor can save up to 8 lives and enhance the lives of up to 75 others through tissue donation. And therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do hereby proclaim April 2026 to be as Be a Donor Month in Grimsby. Be it further resolved that all citizens are encouraged to learn more about organ and tissue donation and transplantation and consider pledging their support by registering as a donator at beadonor.ca. All in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, comment?
Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the Niagara Transit Q4 statistics?
Just want to make a comment
On the donor?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, done.
Through you, Mayor, and your last sentence on the donor, register on email. Well, that right there is about 30 years old, and that's my donor card. And I've lugged it around ever since, and nobody has called me to say, hey, it's time. But no, it doesn't take anything. It's a great, you only need to, Bob Nesbitt here in town was our assistant or deputy engineer for a lot of years. And the man was a double lung transplant. And to the day that he didn't come in anymore, he was just wonderful and great inspiration as to making a donation. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Councillor Howe. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the Niagara Transit Q4 statistics? Councillor Davoli, second. Councillor Vardy. And Councillor Sharwa, you'd like to speak to this?
Thank you, through Mayor Jordan. So I had pulled up the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 metrics on this dashboard, and I just kind of wanted to see where we were as far as value for money for this service. So, and I'm speaking on this because when we're talking about regional services, and I'm hoping that we can find some efficiencies at the, regional level. Mayor Jordan, if you could maybe flag this, but, so just looking at our tax levy and what we've contributed, it's 2.2 million, basically, for regional transit in 2025. And when I work this out, we're looking at about $92 per trip for 9.7 kilometers, so one way. So $92 for a 9.7 kilometer trip. That is the equivalent of my house on Red Haven to No Frills. It's actually exact. And then for comparison, I wanted to see what an Uber would cost for the exact same pickup. 2 minutes for a van carrying 4 people is $11. So if we fully funded an Uber, we're saving $2 million in the town of Grimsby. So, and I bring this up because I think, I'm not looking at us nickel and diming these little efficiencies, but this is huge. And I think there are better ways of doing it. And when I was I believe at Roma, I was speaking with a colleague from another municipality, and she had mentioned that Innisfil had brought forward a program that, and it's actually funny because in this article, when you read it, it was talking about how they had adopted this program because their municipality was too small to fund a bigger, more expensive service. And I looked up how big Innisfil is, 44,000. So they recognized they were too small to fund what they were doing. Yet we're spending 2.2 million for, a much smaller population. But anyhow, so Innisfil has a great program that they won, says they've earned international recognition for the transit initiative. And it is a program with, it's a specialized program with Uber at a fraction of the cost that we are receiving with Niagara Transit. So if in your talks with the region, this is something that you can address, it would be great if smaller municipalities maybe take a look at what Innisfil is doing. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that Niagara Transit Q4 statistics be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 2616 to 2619 inclusive, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next council meeting is scheduled for April 13th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 26-20 and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Good night, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.